Hello, yeah, it's a lovely day outside, and so we've got lovely light in here, and I still look blooming awful. Alright, now this is about take 6 of this video, because I keep making blooming mistakes, okay? I'm talking today about an experience I had a few weeks ago in the half-term holidays with a visit to Audio T in Brighton to listen to the Rega Elicit R amplifier and the Elex R amplifier. Okay, of the two, the Elicit is the more expensive, costing slightly more than a base spec 27-inch iMac, and the Elex R is the cheaper of the two, costing significantly less than a base spec iMac, a base spec 27-inch iMac. It's you know, I am kind of very respectful of money. You know, they're not cheap hi-fi components. They're not the cheapest hi-fi components, but you know, hi-fi costs money, and there are, you know, designs that cost significantly more from other manufacturers, you know, so you know, you are still, you know, in terms of hi-fi, you're still in the budget end, you know, but you're at the blooming good sort of part of the budget end of hi-fi, okay? And you know, you are in the kind of sort of, it's a miracle that something this cheap, in quotes, kind of, you know, sounds so blooming good, you know. You know, when you're paying, you know, tens of thousands of pounds for hi-fi, you know, you expect it to sound, you know, absolutely stunning. So, you know, I'm aware that, you know, I'm wearing a jumper that's probably about £4 from Asda, and cheapo t-shirts and whatnot. You know, I don't sort of, you know, splash out on designer clothes. You know, I don't, you know, sort of go on major holidays, you know, halfway around the world and so. But every 10 years or so, you know, I do like to sort of, you know, try and, you know, somehow or other, you know, sort of, you know, acquire, you know, hi-fi upgrades. You know, that's my luxury in life. Okay, you know, whether you agree that that's, you know, the possible, you know, the best possible use of resources, never mind. You know, it's what I like. Okay, so yeah, I'm, you know, at Audio T, and I'm listening to you know, these two components. Now, the system that they had was essentially my own, i.e. the RP8 record player with exact cartridge on it, ARIA phono stage, and they had RS3 speakers. I've got R3 speakers, but my R3 speakers are very old now, and not in the current range. Okay, and they also had an Apollo R CD player, which is, you know, what I've got essentially, which is their budget CD player. Now, in terms of, you know, where these amps stand in the current Rega range, you have the Brio, which is their budget amp. You have the Elex R, which is kind of a semi-budget amp, an Elicit R, which is their kind of top end of their kind of budget series, and then they have the Osiris amp, which is what they call their reference series, which costs about 4 times as much as the Elicit. Okay. In terms of, you know, the CD players, again, you have the Apollo R, which is the budget CD player in a half-size case. You have the Saturn R, which is in a full-size hi-fi case, and then you have the Isis and the Isis Valve, Okay, a few years ago, and you'll hear the account of it if you dig around my channel, that I made a video called the Top End Rega Experience or something like that, where I'm actually talking about a visit that I paid to listen to the Isis and Osiris. The speaker cable they had in the shop was named NACA 5, which I have to say I have a prejudice against. I've never found a situation, I've had some in the past, I sold it on eBay, I've never had a situation, either a room or a system that has made that NACA 5 sound as good as it does in the shop. Okay, at home I've just found that it's accentuated any bass resonances that are in the room, and it's made the mid-range and treble just a little bit too shouty for my tastes, and so in fact I actually just don't like it, but it's what they have in the shop, is what they were using. Okay, I think if I ever went and demoed any speakers, I would insist that they change the cable. I think that's what I would do. I think because not in I would want a far more sort of honest kind of evaluation of the music. Okay, so I took some CDs and records with me. Okay, I took Gary Newman's what's the album called, Dead Sun Rising, on CD. The track I listened to on there was The Fall. Okay, I took the Raconteurs, Broken Boy Soldiers CD, and the track I listened to on that was Hands, track 2. I took Joan Armour Trading, This Charming Life CD, and I listened to the song People Who Win from there. And I took Kula Shaker, Peasants, Pigs and Astronauts, and listened to The Sound of Drums. And those last two will be familiar to you because I've talked about them numerous times in the past. They're two CDs that I like to take with me to evaluate hi-fi equipment because I know the recordings quite well. In terms of vinyl, I took with me Semi-Precious Weapons, Aviation, and I took my second pressing mono with the Beatles from 1963, which is extremely well loved but still plays. So in I went and I listened to the Elex R first of all, I actually thought, golly, this is having fun. The first thing that I was kind of stood out was the fact that I listened to all of this stuff a couple of hours before at home with my Mira 3. The Elex R, by the way, is a direct replacement of the Mira 3. The Elicit doesn't really have a direct replacement in terms of their old range, because it went up to the Cursor 3 preamp and the Maya 3 power amp thing. The whole thing had a lot more kind of thickness and weight and texture to it than the Mira 3. Didn't mean that the Mira 3 was lean in that way. It's just that I've said this before as well. The Mira 3 is a very laid back amplifier, and it kind of just takes a complete step out of the system, and just lets the music kind of speak for itself. In a sense, it's a very revealing amplifier. If the music's forward, it will present it in a forward way. If it's laid back, it will present it in a very laid back kind of way, but never to a degree where that kind of forwardness kind of impinges on the nervous system. So it's a great amplifier to listen to sort of people like Neil Young and, you know, Joni Mitchell and, you know, all that kind of sort of folk rocky kind of stuff, you know, from the 70s and you know, and 60s on, because, you know, it's just so warm and, you know, and, you know, it'll bring out anything, you know, really delicate, you know. You know, in particular, you know, one of my favourite modern albums is Ed Sheeran's first album, which, you know, is just beautiful through it. Okay, so Gary Newman, you know, he is, you know, this is a great big brash recording. He's renowned for you know, boomy synths, you know, stereo going sort of all over the place, tiny little details sort of clingy clankering in, and, you know, it's just, you know, a very full-on kind of experience, you know, with everything happening. You know, that's Gary Newman for you. Okay, the Elex had it all under control. There's no treble that was going to grate on your ears. There's you know, the bass was, you know, sort of underpinning the music and, you know, not hitting you and hurting you, as it were. But yeah, it was, you know, just you know, it's just having a great time. Okay, but as I say, it's slightly more forward and thicker and weightier than the Mirror 3. Okay, I next changed the track to the Raconteurs, and I listened to Hans. Now, Hans, via the Mirror 3, straight after Gary Newman, was, you know, kind of, you know, an example of the Mirror 3 taking a real kind of step back, you know, everything moving back in the soundstage, and just, you know, a very raw production there going on, and, you know, as a tad thin, maybe, possibly, but, you know, nothing that would kind of, you know, not lackluster, but just, you know, you're just aware it's a far more raw recording. Okay, and again, you know, just because you change the equipment that you play it on is not going to change the overall character of the music, but it's going to kind of you know, there'll still be the same things there, but, you know, through the Elex, texture was thicker, vocals in particular, you know, had more kind of, you know, body to them. You know, the stereo was, you know, the actual image placement was good, but in terms of the physicality, more physical than the Mirror 3, not as physical as I remembered the Osiris to be. Sorry, but we've got to remember that this is an Apollo R playing it and not an Isis CD player. The Apollo R is about 1/12 of the price of the Isis CD player, so, you know, that's kind of, you know, what you're kind of comparing it with. But, you know, yes, there was some physicality to it. Okay, when we put Joan Armour Trading on singing People Who Win, my comment was, blimey, you can see her lips moving. You know, had a bit of a giggle about it, because, you know, it was so real. The Isis and Osiris had Joan Armour Trading stand up, sing to you, you know, play the bass guitar to you, because I think it's her playing it, you know, and, you know, instruments, you know, were standing there and, you know, and being performed, you know. You know, you had this kind of almost very real experience of, you know, imagining someone posturing with, you know, an electric guitar, for example, you know, via the Isis and Osiris. You didn't get quite that with the Elex R, but it wasn't far off it, you know. You know, whether or not it was 12 times the price worth, you know, for the Isis and Osiris, you kind of, yeah, you know, it's debatable. It depends where your values lie, I suppose. But yeah, you know, it was, you know, a very significant step in the Isis Osiris kind of presentation. But, you know, again, I've spoken about the Apollo R and how, you know, the physicality of of stereo placement on that as well, which is again a very positive move from the old Apollo CD player. So yeah, and then I played my Cooler Shaker Sound of Drums track. Again, I've spoken about this one before, and very much similar traits. When I've listened on previous incarnations of my hi-fi system, probably with that dreaded NACA 5 stuff in, but I've found that it can resonate in the bass, and you get a bit of overhang, so that a rhythm that should have been quavers, dum 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 dum, ends up sounding more like semi-breathes. In other words, the transient's not quite there, and and a bit of boomy bass overhang. Perfectly controlled via the Elex R. I'm not going to say bass light, but I was less aware of the bass than I have been before. But the dexterity of the bass player really came through. I'm a sucker for a slide, and that was all coming through. The sort of the twiddles and vibrato of the strings, that sort of thing. It's certainly very melodic down there, and treble, not zingy, not shouting at you. Vocals, lovely and present. I might stick my neck out and say perhaps not quite as atmospheric as I've heard this album, but certainly, the Mira 3, had atmosphere in spades. The Elex R perhaps not quite so, but still having a blast, having an absolute ball of a time. Okay, so then we swapped over to the Elicit R. Okay, we played Joan Armour Trading People Who Win Again. I felt the bass this time in my chest. Okay, it's a very prominent bass loop that the song is based on. If you forgive the pun, yes, the whole sort of instrumentation on that album is very raw. You've got a few keyboards, pianos, her sort of trademark rock guitar sound, and her lovely vocals, drums, and not much else really. So very, very frugal and economic use of instrumentation going on there. So this bass was hitting me in the chest. Okay, and the scale of the sound was much bigger. I wasn't really taken aback too much by the physicality of the sound. Certainly I felt the Elex R made a much better kind of case for itself in terms of, the blimey, you can see her lips moving. You couldn't, you didn't get the kind of, if you jumped from the Elex to the Osiris, I think you would have been much more aware of this huge upgrade in terms of physicality of presence of person there. You didn't get that with the Elex R, and I felt that actually the bass was kind of veiling that. Okay, again, treble and mid-range, well controlled, but the balance. I'm talking an awful lot about the bass here. I don't, in the great scheme of things, it shouldn't be all that important. Yes, you want some solidity down there and some control, but it shouldn't shout at you and scream at you. That's you're kind of getting into you're not. But if you imagine that a Southend on sea Ford Fiesta with fluffy dice in it and a huge sound system shaking the car, you're not getting to that levels, but it's the very refined hi-fi equivalent, shall we say. Okay, now that could have been And in fact, it probably was, because the Elicit is a damn fine amp. But it's, I just think that the synergy between the amp and the speakers wasn't quite there. Okay, the RS3s are Rega's basic floor standing speakers. Okay, they are less than half the price of the amp. Okay, and you just felt in a way that was totally different from the Osiris, where you thought the Osiris, it's a darn miracle that, you know, the thing sounds so good with speakers that are, you know, completely in, you know, the budget end, you know, and you've got their reference end speaker making them sound absolutely amazing, you know, reference speaker and CD player. You have to say, reference amplifier and CD player, sorry, you know, making them sound absolutely darned amazing. The Elicit R just said, upgrade your speakers. They cannot control the amount of bass that I am giving you. That's really, that was the message that I got. It was reinforced when we played the Semi-Precious Weapons song Aviation High via the record player on the Elicit R. The record, when you buy the record of Aviation by Semi-Precious Weapons, you also get a CD as well. The CD is mastered to out of control loudness war levels that is just screaming, look at me, I can do stereo, look, I go over here, I go over there, I can do treble, ding, 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 and I can do bass, boom, 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 and it is an assault, and you just want to turn it down. Whereas with the album, yes, you want to turn it up, but, you know, it sounds like it was mastered in a cardboard box, and, you know, you just are screaming for just a tiny bit more clarity, please. And through the Elicit R, it sounded, you know, it just made it sound as it is, a very badly mastered and cut record. You know, brilliant music. Listen to the Semi-Precious Weapons, people. You can find them on SoundCloud. They are fantastic. But you know, they are just, the Elicit R was telling you that this was a very badly recorded album, which I knew anyway, but, you know, you didn't have to rub it in quite so much. The Elex R, on the other hand, actually, you know, because the guy is standing there and he is not agreeing with me about, you know, my assessment of the Elicit R. You know, I said to him, it sounds like it wants a better pair of speakers. And, you know, he went, really? Kind of thing. Oh, it's bigger in scale. You know, they're lovely people in Audio T, and they will let you go in there and listen to their equipment, and do so if you're in, you know, if you're going to buy hi-fi. Be honest with them as well, as I was, I think, because I think then you will get, you know, you'll get a purchase that you're happy with. You know, it would have been nice if there'd been the time to try it with different speakers just to see. You know, it could have just been the speaker cable upsetting everything, but everything, you know, in a hi-fi demo room, you know, everything should be just so. You know, they'll have, you know, very controlled and expensive main supplies. They'll, you know, all the furnishings will be acoustically, you know, correct for, you know, the for sound reproduction. You know, it will, you know, it will, you know, be done properly. You know, it's not your ordinary common or garden living room that you're going into, even though you've got a nice sofa to sit on. You know, all the distances between, you know, the speakers will be just so. All of, you know, they're marked on the floor. You know, you know, and so, you know, the distance that you are from it will also be, you know, absolutely spot on and perfect, you know, to get the very best out of it. But, you know, so, you know, he didn't really agree with me. And then, you know, we put Aviation High on the Elex R, and suddenly the whole thing opened out. And I said, look, it's opened out. It's just, it sounds like, you know, it's, you know, it's not as mushy and boxy as it was before. And he said, no, it isn't. You know, I see what you mean. And, you know, I think, in my surroundings, because all I can do is evaluate hi-fi equipment from, any kind of sort of room or whatever that I would play it in, I think the bass would have just been too much. Okay, and there is a case for saying that, bass reproduction is very, very dependent on the size of the room that you are in. And if the room that you are in is too small, bass sound waves are much, much larger than treble. They will swamp the treble, and they will, and you actually won't hear them properly, because they don't have the physical space around them to develop, and to travel, which they need to do. You'd have to be in my bedroom over there to get the full kind of extent of the bass. Okay, and then there is the synergy with the speakers. Okay, to get decent bass on speakers, you need large bass units in there, bass drivers called woofers, as it were. And and when I say, to get really natural bass, you are talking Tannoy Westminster style things, big cabinets. Beg your pardon, just got to put my password in here. Big cabinets, with huge, bass units in them, sort of 20-inch bass units and whatever. Not that they will sound boomy and whatever; they'll just sound natural and ordinary. Okay, and I just felt that the Elicit would just be telling you, you're using budget speakers, upgrade your speakers. You're using budget speakers, upgrade your speakers. Yes, there is always a hankering within me to tweak my hi-fi system, and I have to, sort of forget about it, kind of thing, and I wouldn't want a piece of equipment to rub it in even further. Do you know what I mean? That's what I felt that the Elicit R was saying, probably more so than the Rega Osiris. Okay, so actually I ended up taking an Elex R home. I'm going to sell my Mira 3, get some of the money back, but yeah, it's it's a sad fact, really. I ended up taking one home, and the first impression upon moving the Mira 3 out of the rack, the Mira 3 is a heavy amplifier, 61 watts per channel, which means it needs nice big transformers and whatnots inside. I don't know anything about electronics, but there you go. And then I took the Elex R out of the box, plonked it on my rack, and blimey, that really is heavy. It's a little bit more powerful. It's 72 watts into 8 ohms per channel, RMS. And in terms of, in my room, it sounds a bit bassier than, because, for some reason or other, I seem to be obsessed with the bass here, but that's probably because of, of what I found, was kind of slightly off kilter in the Elicit R. But yeah, that's because I'm in a smaller room. Okay. It's absolutely lovely, and even not listening to hi-fi, but playing my telly, as it were, i.e. my iMac. That is my telly. I download and stream things. I don't have a telly, even I was watching Planet Oil, which is a documentary, and the dialogue beautifully locked to the screen. Okay, even I haven't got the iMac perfectly placed. You probably imagine that to get beautifully locked dialogue to a screen, you'd have to have the speakers either side, but actually you don't. My speakers are over there, and my computer's right in front of me here, so they're kind of like sideways on in a right angle kind of thing, and you still get beautifully locked dialogue, and the detail in any kind of musical soundtrack that's going along. With My Planet Oil, you're just getting, great big thuds in the bass that, they weren't horrible thuds. They were, very satisfying and meaty thuds in the bass at very low levels as well, so that you're getting, this detail that is being thrown out at you. And it's just delicious to listen to. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's just a really, very satisfying experience. As I say, if I'd gone home with an Elicit, I'd have been thinking, you need to upgrade your speakers. You need to upgrade your speakers, because I think, the bass and stuff would have been out of control. So yeah, that is my experience. I will say just a word or two about the controls on it. I'd like to show you, but I don't think I can because I'm sitting in front of my iMac. But the Mira 3 had a combined volume and input selector knob, i.e. normally turning it will adjust the volume. If you wanted to change from record player to CD player, for example, you press the knob in, waited a couple of seconds, and then it would turn into an input selector, and you'd be able to change it. The thing is that if you were doing that quickly, then it was a very hit and miss affair. Okay, and it's you do actually have to wait a couple of seconds for it to change, kind of thing, and it gets quite frustrating. Thankfully, on the Elex R and the new Rega amps, you've actually got a button, a separate button to press to change the inputs, and the volume control is a separate thing. Okay, it's a fairly satisfying knob to control, but I actually like, although the remote, now this is the same remote that comes with the Apollo R CD player, and I think I've spoken about this before. It's a very plasticky, sort of crappy affair, but what I do like on it is adjusting the volume through here, because it actually does turn the volume knob as well, which I never seen before really, and for me, and I'm pleased by little things, and that's for me it's a bit wicked doing that, but yeah, this this remote control is, it controls the CD player and controls the amplifier. I've got two of them now, and when I had batteries in them both, then one started to interfere with the other, and then I suddenly found that out of nowhere, it just made one of them, the light kept flashing on it, and the inputs kept changing on the amplifier, which I thought, oh my god, I've bought a Duff amplifier, but then I kind of realised what was going on here with the remotes, and I had to take the batteries out of one of them so that it would work properly. But yeah, the Elex R, a wonderful amplifier. The Elicit R, a wonderful amplifier. I don't buy the magazine because I don't want to read about tellies and plasma screens and whatnot else. And yes, they can be a little bit kind of over salesman like in their approach, but What Hi-Fi tested both of these amplifiers in group tests with other amplifiers of their class, and both of them won. Okay, which one you have, if you were in the market for it, would depend on your ancillaries, and would also depend on the size of your room. For me, the Elex R is perfect. Okay, and yeah, if I ever got an Elicit R, I'd have to get a bigger room, I'd have to get better speakers. Okay, alright, and here endeth this video. Okay, I'm hoping that I didn't make any mistakes in it. If I did, I'm not going to go back and correct them. I'll put something in the information, but as I say, it's about the 5th time I've done it, and I just found too many slips of the tongue in the last one, and it took half an hour, and I don't want to spend another half an hour on it. Okay, all right, see you later, bye.